Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming. It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming!
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
That's cold.
Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
No, that's all right, I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
And winter is here. What's going on, Russ?
Not much. Like I said, for those of you who've been tracking my health over the last year, went to the urologist and everything's normal size prostate.
So it really was almost a year ago, right? That you were in that fiasco in DC and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a lot. I really went through a lot, and I was even sick beforehand because I was always getting infections from this prostate situation.
Right.
And even the recovery from the surgery was kind of difficult. But once I healed from that, the urologist is very happy with the outcome. So anyway,
good deal.
A lot healthier.
Well, it could have gone way further south. So and you know, I know it's a cliche, but people don't really understand how important health is until you don't have it. And then when you don't have it, you're you know, kind of up shit creek. So that's good news. And it's always good to hear some positive news in the world today. And if you're new to the Friday FARcast, this is the last Friday of the month, and we are joined by our friend Russ Winter from winterwatch.net, which is, in my estimation, one of the absolute best websites, you know, in this realm that covers things like Turtles on the Fence Post, you know, social programming, rabbit hole, du jour, you know, how we got here, who some of the players were, who some of the players are. And Russ also has another side of his kind of repertoire, which we've spoken about a few times before on the show, and that's on the true crime side of things. And we've talked about the smiley face killer or killers here on this program. And today we're going to get into a subject that's it's pretty interesting from what I can sort of glean in terms of who this person is and some of the connections. This is not your ordinary, everyday suspect. And we're talking about an architect by the name of Rex Heuermann and Heuermann and the Gilgo murders, right? So these are murders that took place on Long Island, if I'm not mistaken. And so
it goes under the term LISK, Long Island serial killer, and it's been a long-standing case. God knows how long this guy's been active. He's 59 years old, so it's kind of hard to believe that he just committed a series of murders and 12 years ago, 11, 12, 13 years ago, and then just went dormant and wasn't doing anything before. And it's just not the normal process for these guys. But as we'll get into, there may be a little different angle to the story than what they're reporting.
Okay. So why don't you start off and give us some background on Rex Heuermann, Architect Rex, and the Long Island serial killings?
It's very, very big in the news, especially probably in the East Coast. And it kind of stems around. This guy was arrested about 2 weeks ago. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. For his DNA was found on he's been charged with three murders, and there's a fourth that's pending. And so his DNA was finally found on these women's bodies that he had buried out on Long Beach at Gilgo Beach. Those bodies were found, I think, in 2011, 2011. So it's been an unsolved case for a number of years. The guy's an architect, and there's a little, I don't know, there's a little clip that maybe we could show. He kind of talks about his work. He describes himself as a troubleshooter. Did you get that little clip I sent to you? Maybe we just let him introduce himself. Let's let him introduce himself.
It's on Twitter. It's on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So I'm giving people kind of a visual here. I don't know if you can see it, Russ, but on the one side we have the Gilgo Beach victims, and then on the other side we have the so-called Atlantic City victims. And so that's a visual presentation here. Let me see if I can find the clip here. It shouldn't be that hard.
Now, he hasn't been charged with Atlantic City. It's called the eastbound strangulations because the bodies are facing east for some reason. He's kind of a suspect on that. He hasn't been charged with those crimes. Who knows on those? He also had a condo out in Las Vegas. So that's not good.
So we have Programmed to Kill, and then Cover Up Part 328, and then there's the Gilgo Beach Suspect. Psychologist analyzes behavior, body language.
Go to about. I think I marked a place for us to start to kind of just
620 in the video. All right, let me move ahead to 620. We'll go to 620, and this is where we get to meet Mr.
Take a look at this guy.
Heuermann.
What he did is he did a YouTube video to kind of promote his business, explain what he did, but it gives insights into his personality.
All right, let me right there. Okay, so let's present this, and right here. There we go. And is this the one you're talking about right here? This video?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's at 620, and that's where he should be coming in. Here we go.
Gentleman on the right
I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
Okay.
Been working in.
This is interesting. He said born and raised on Long Island.
I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
It's interesting that for some reason he closes his eyes when he's talking about born and raised on Long Island. We oftentimes associate that with things that people don't like. I don't know why he doesn't like that specifically, but it seems that unconsciously there's maybe a little something to that. Let's keep watching.
Okay. Been working in Manhattan since 1987. I have other clients who are a lot of other architects, and we'll handle their interactions with the building department, especially out of city architects because they're a little afraid of the city. And when a job that should have been routine.
Now, this is interesting. You have the interviewer laughing, trying to develop some kind of rapport. And while Heuermann was willing to go along with that earlier on, he has a point to make now. He's not interested in laughing and trying to get along in that way. He's talking about himself, and he wants himself to be heard. So he's not willing to divert his attention in this moment. Once again, this shows somebody with a little bit of a controlling nature. Let's watch that again.
The city architects because they're a little afraid of the city. And when a job.
See, he didn't even give a polite smile. And that's very interesting because oftentimes with social mirroring, when we're with somebody that we like, we automatically do that. We try to do that, even if it's not in our nature to be jovial and laugh the way that this interviewer is laughing. We oftentimes reflect it a little bit, and he's not reflecting it at all, which I think is interesting.
Job that should have been routine suddenly becomes not routine. I get the phone call.
That you do.
People don't always understand when it comes to building codes. They never read the administrative section.
Okay, Robert. So let's skip ahead to what he talks about his tools that he uses. This is revealing too. So a couple tweets down on the DM. There's another clip. You see it?
The Eerie parallels, that one.
Yeah, I just kind of where did it?
There we go. Yeah, I think you have it time stamped here. So let's do that. It's always fun playing with StreamYard when I've got like 10,000 tabs open and I have to like find the StreamYard tab again. All right, hold on. All right, so let's stop.
Yeah, that's not it. So I don't know. I guess I didn't send it to you. But anyway, he talks about he talks about his hammer and how the guy asked him what kind of tools that if you had to describe a tool that you use, what would you say? Really strange question. And he said a furniture hammer, that he inherited from his dad. And he says it helps me frame and put everything in its proper place. Kind of made some odd comments.
Well, he's an odd guy. Clearly, he's an odd guy. Like he has a very odd vibe. And somebody, when that I guess that guy's reading his body language and his mirroring. When he brings that up, that point up where he's talking about how he's not mirroring the other guy's sort of joviality, you could tell, right? Like he's dead fucking serious. And yeah, that was that. And when somebody does something like that, I mean, really, really good. Like if he was a really good sociopath, he would have joked along with him. Right. Like if that was Ted Bundy, he would have laughed with the other guy. Like that's how really good sociopaths operate. But there's a distinction between sociopaths and psychopaths. And if these things are true about Architect Rex, he probably falls more into the psychopathic camp of being a killer. And psychopaths, it's a very strange distinction. Sociopaths have no conscience whatsoever, right? So that's a real sociopath could laugh with that guy, and he would still be as dead serious as Rex Heuermann. But a psychopath would not necessarily do that, because a psychopath does have something to hide. Like a sociopath has something to hide, but they don't really care. They're really good at hiding their less than moral activities. But psychopaths can crack, and psychopaths are also, strangely enough, capable of experiencing remorse, right? Like they can go through and kill somebody and then have these very intense kind of emotional experiences around what they do, and then they'll obviously do it again, where sociopaths won't. They'll just shut the door, right? And they'll just kind of move on. They're sociopaths are more capable of compartmentalizing their behavior, and psychopaths aren't. Psychopaths, like in that moment, he could not compartmentalize his behavior. You could just see that, right? So that was a really interesting tell on that guy's part.
The other thing that's curious about the guy is he lives in this, I can't pronounce the name. It's a fairly exclusive neighborhood closer to New York on Long Island as you start to head out to the main part of Long Island. He's lived there. He was born and raised there. And his dad died when he was like 13. And then he bought the house from his mom, and he still lives there. And it's an exclusive neighborhood. And it's like he has a monster house. I don't know anybody who's seen any pictures of it. Might be worth it to maybe just show his house. Let me see if I can find it quick. But anyway, the question is, this guy's a fairly well-to-do architect. He's pretty well connected. So what he's talking about is working with the city, getting the troubleshooter type of guy. So he was brought in on some important projects, including one that I'm going to mention on Long Island in a second when we'll get into this a little deeper. And the question is, he has this monster house that's violating probably all kinds of code and just looks like crap. And I was listening to Curtis Sliwa.
Curtis Sliwa.
Curtis Lewa.
Yeah.
And he and his staff checked with the city to find out if there had been any complaints against architect Rex on his Munster house. No, never. And his comment was that these are very exclusive neighborhoods where people are just, a lot of not in my backyard type stuff, and will jump all over any neighbor that's not complying.
Right.
But apparently they just threw it into the trash can when it came to architect Rex. So that kind of gives you a little flavor, I think, of the individual we're dealing with. He's not just your ordinary serial killer.
So do you see this comment here, Miss Sherlock's Musings?
Yeah.
She says there's 10 or 11 victims all along the short stretch of road. 4 were buried in hunting material. The rest were not. That's why he's only been charged with 3, but will be with the 4th soon. What do you have to say about that?
Well, there's more. He's involved in more stuff, possibly in Atlantic City, possibly in South Carolina, possibly in Las Vegas, possibly on Long Island. So far, they've got the DNA on these 4 that they mentioned. It was just mentioned there, a little cluster. Right. And then they also got him on some of his cell phone. He had a burner phone that he didn't quite shut down. They kind of boxed him in on that. So the technology for catching these guys is just taken off. And when they apply it and apply the full technology, they can catch them.
Here's his house, by the way.
Oh, good.
I got a picture of it here. Let me see if I can bring it up. It's right here. So that's his home right there.
Yeah, up there on the left-hand corner. Not the one on the right.
That's not his house.
That's not his house. The upper left-hand corner. That's his house.
Why?
You might be able to get a large. Oh, roll down a little bit. You might get a little bigger picture of it.
Okay, hold on. Let me do a stop share on it. Let's see. So it's the brown looking thing. Is that his house?
Yeah, reddish.
Oh man, that is bizarre.
Yeah, it's probably built in the 1940s or something like that, and it just never been upkept. And then it was described as cluttered. He has a vault in his basement, a soundproof vault.
So that's his house right there, right? This is the house of the family from the
Gilgo Beach. Right there is a partial view of his house. So click on that. That'll give you an idea.
This one right here.
And then the third one down, right there, third to the right.
That.
I don't know why Google search is producing these images for his house.
This is his place.
Yeah, that's it. That's it from a drone flying over.
They're not giving us a whole lot, are they?
No. Here it is right there on the left of that one you just showed.
That one?
I can't see very well. My vision's not very good, so I'm kind of a hard time helping.
That's
you.
his house.
Yeah,
that's his house.
Yeah. But if you get a close up of it, you'll see kind of, it's got an old car with a tarp over it. It's cluttered.
This is the house of an architect.
Yeah, in an exclusive neighborhood.
That's fucking grisly. Pardon my language.
It's kind of the Munster. It's being described as a Munster house.
That is really
the neighbors have been complaining. The neighbors have been complaining or claim they've been complaining about it for years, and yet the city has no record of any kind of citizen complaints.
You would think that a guy who is an architect and has really high-powered clients would live in something a little bit better than this.
Right. Something odd about this guy.
When I see this house, you know where my mind goes? What's beneath the house?
Well, they've been digging in his backyard, and they haven't really revealed what's been dug up. But the police have been saying they've been hauling out lots of evidence, just lots and lots of evidence. It's very, very cluttered. So we'll find out maybe if he's had some souvenirs or, what he's been doing. He looks to me to be a collector because the way he set up his bodies out there at Gilgo Beach was almost like a bone collection that he had out there, and he had them in burlap bags. He put them into burlap bags.
Wow.
And they stumbled across it kind of by accident. It's kind of a backstory on that.
So when was he charged, or has he been charged?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. He's in jail.
He's in jail.
So let me kind of develop what I made a possible theory, and this is speculative. I don't know, and I think this is where the police need to be looking, and whether if they don't, then it kind of tells you maybe they're trying to cover up something larger. But one of Architect Rex's clients was a guy named Jimmy Bassett, who developed the Hyatt Hotel out at Riverhead on Long Island. And Architect Rex was his go-to guy, one of his main architects, if not the chief architect for this project. So Jimmy Bassett is in the rumor mill is alleged to be kind of a party guy, kind of a wild man.
Mm-hmm.
Different people have said that. You can listen to it on air. I don't know anything about Jimmy Bassett. I've never met him. Jimmy Bassett actually, by coincidence, committed suicide 2 days after they started uncovered the fifth body. There's another case involving a sex worker by the name of Shannon Gilbert, who was discovered a year later. And 2 days later, Jimmy Bassett commit suicide.
Convenient.
Okay, then there's a police chief, notorious police chief by the name of James Burke. Now, Suffolk County is the 11th biggest police force in the United States. And it's very hard to figure out how James Burke even became police chief. He had kind of a checkered history. There'd been some infractions, mostly involving prostitutes, even before he became police chief.
I got 2 words for that: Freemason.
Okay, yeah, something like that. I think maybe even worse than Freemason. So I'm trying to make sense of this. So you got these guys dropping, including Jimmy Bassett's partner committed suicide or supposedly committed suicide. And
so we got a body count now on the other side of this thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now after the girls started being discovered, and this case started to break. So the theory, and they were talking about on this Curtis Sliwa show, and again, I don't know, but the thing is that Burke was eventually sent to prison for 48 months for a bunch of civil rights violations. Now, let me tell you the story of the centerpiece of the civil rights violation. There was a drug dealer or a drug user who spotted Burke's car or van parked on the street and got into it. The door was unlocked and removed a duffel bag. Apparently he didn't realize it was the police chief. I mean, he kind of found out afterwards, but he kind of accidentally robbed the police chief of Suffolk County, removed the duffel bag, and in the duffel bag were handcuffs, restraints, a bunch of, dildos and, whips,
mm-hmm.
and a collection of hardcore BDSM porno, including one of them that he looked at. There were 2 discs, kind of like homemade disc. I guess that you put on your own DVD, not a non-commercial one. Mm-hmm. He views it, and it shows a group of like 3 men dressed in hoods and leather beating the crap out of a woman.
Wow.
This is what Chief Burke carried around in his car, in his duffel bag, along with handcuffs.
Wow. So this is kind of, this is leaky, right? Like there's something going on here.
It's even worse than Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, like he's part of a ring, right? This is what it
Exactly.
sounds like. Yeah,
exactly. And so
interesting.
the theory is this is it was a ring. In fact, one guy that worked with Burke when he was a regular sergeant down in the police force said that Burke just haphazardly asked him if he knew where he could buy or get a hold of some snuff films.
Wow.
And the guy answers, "Well, I have no idea, Jimmy. Why would I know anything about that? Just out of the blue, he's going around, and so he's feeling what he's doing is I think he's just feeling out fellow travelers that are interested in this stuff,
right?
And they would have their regular card games, and they would have their drinking, and they would often have women over. That wasn't unusual,
right?
Have some sex workers over. But then it seemed like after that part of the party was over, the crowd would clear out, and the serious guys would go back into the soundproof room where they're having this party and make snuff films.
Right.
And the theory goes on that architect Rex, being connected to this group, was kind of like the doorman and the procurer and the cleanup guy.
Right.
He's a troubleshooter.
He's a fixer.
He looks more. I tell you, he's obviously sadistic and he's a troubleshooter, but he's a special flavor of serial killer. He doesn't quite fit the mold.
He's what they call a fixer. That's what he is.
Fixer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is he going to talk? Is he going to spill the beans on the extent of this ring that's going on? And so, eventually the DA out there was convicted and sent to prison. And importantly, when the case started up, it's like they find these girls, and then all of a sudden, by coincidence, Chief Burke becomes the police chief of Suffolk County.
Oh.
Almost simultaneously with the
right.
start of the investigation. And he gets the FBI out of it. He gets the state police out of it. And he says, we'll handle it. We're going to handle this whole case. We don't need anybody else. And then just completely botched the investigation. It didn't go anywhere. And then really only in the last year did they kind of really get organized around finding this killer, successfully finding him.
So I ran across this article. Apparently, Rex Heuermann was married.
Right, to an Icelandic lady.
And so she just recently filed for divorce. Just like the 23rd of July or something like that.
Yeah.
So I find this picture here fascinating. Okay.
Yeah, so there's his house. There's his house.
Right. This is the crime scene. Look at how many women are involved in the crime scene. Like, I think you can say, well, this is just, who's on the job for that day or who's on the job for this case. But clearly they're presenting, and this is not part of a conspiracy or anything. I'm not saying that this has anything to do with the killings, but they're clearly presenting in this sort of piece of pictorial evidence that women are strongly involved in trying to get to the bottom of this, right? Can you see that?
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that before, but you're right. It's kind of a narrative they're trying to get going. We botched it up before, but now we got serious people on it. But right. Are they really going to bust this case open to who knows what levels? Because my larger theory about how everything works, compromise and a lot of really evil people out there that ends up being the turtles on the fence post. James Burke was a turtle on the fence post that was made police chief, undeservedly so. Eventually goes to prison along with the DA. The DA, it's the only conviction of a DA in the last 25 years anywhere in the United States.
Wow.
Which kind of surprises me.
Yeah.
That alone kind of surprises me.
Right.
So
where is Burke now?
They got him in jail there locally.
So he's behind bars.
Yeah.
Right.
He's supposed to be he's supposed to be very subdued and quiet, not revealing too much. Now, if he were a true pure serial killer, so here's another theory I have.
Okay.
If all he was just a pure serial killer, at some point in time when they produced enough evidence take Gary Ridgway, BTK. They spilled the beans because they want to brag.
Right. They want to take credit. They want to take credit for their malevolence.
Now, this guy, I think, is clearly narcissistic, the way he displays himself in that interview.
Right.
So he was the real deal. He would start talking about his crimes.
Right.
Or I mean, it's possible he could take the rap on a bunch of crimes that these other guys were involved in. But what was Rex doing? Was he? The other story that's out there is that they took these women out on a boat and did their thing, and then dumped them at sea.
Right.
So there you could really have a body count.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're just there literally are hundreds, if not thousands, of missing women in the Northeast and all up and down the Eastern Seaboard.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I remember going back into your, not going back into it, but, exploring your website probably about 2 years ago. And that's when you really got into all the smiley face stuff. And you went really pretty deep into, that whole realm and Son of Sam and Horowitz and how on the surface it looks like like this guy Heuermann, an isolated case of somebody who has a real problem with women or reality, and you dig a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, and all of a sudden you've hit this this spike and this mine of this underworld infestation of all these creeps.
Power.
Yeah.
Power players.
Yeah. And a real network of these things going on. Man, so this is kind of mind blowing, right? So you have the whole smiley face thing, which is kind of ongoing. And then you have kind of this thing that's happening in its own, kind of vacuum or world. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that these two sort of sets of random killings are somehow connected? Like, is this a much larger network that we're looking at?
I think the guy's a fixer, like we established. He establishes it himself in his own interview. The police need to be following up on a lot of cases, and maybe they're going to break some more cases. It would seem that they should. Because I can't believe this guy just started killing women at 48 years old.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get an itch at 48.
Right.
It's not the way these guys are.
No,
they can go dormant, when they get older. Like BTK didn't kill anybody in his last 15 years.
Right. I guess what I'm wondering is, because we see this, right? We see what looks like networks of people that are involved in some really heinous crimes. And are they all kind of independent, or are they part of a much larger network that has various chapters that are associated with? Like, how far away are these killings from, say, the smiley face killings, right? Are they that far apart? Right.
Well, I think it's a form of secret society.
Well, this is what I think too.
Yeah, it's maybe a contained secret society, but probably interlinked. Right. Where maybe the other secret societies don't know all the dealings of the Long Beach crew.
Right.
Probably organized crime is involved in it.
Well, I think
sometimes the stories of these women going out to Long Island didn't make any sense to me either. Listen to that.
Right.
They'd be offered, they would get them out of New York City or kind of in the urban area. They wouldn't get local girls out of Long Island. Well, why is that? Because it's too close to home. You don't shit in your own backyard with local people.
Right. That's true.
That's kind of a dictum of a lot of serial killers will say that.
Yeah.
And so they end up going into the big town and putting in these ads and offering like $1,000, $1,500 to go alone out to Long Beach or Long Island. And kind of, you look at the girls are not that big of a deal. I mean, in the world of escorts, it's just kind of like fairly average looking women.
Well,
that didn't make any sense either.
It's a very crowded field these days.
Right. Yeah. It's competitive. So why would you think that you could go out to Long Island, unless you're doing a party for 5 guys? Okay. You might charge a more exorbitant amount of money for quote unquote a party where they're going to be a little BDSM action.
Well, there's a movie with Martin Sheen called The True Believers. Have you ever seen this movie?
No.
So the premise of the movie is that Martin Sheen is in this community, and he starts to uncover at almost every single level of the community, essentially a satanic cult, right? And he can't get away from it, right?
Wow.
And then
wow.
Then he finds out
what's it called?
It's called The True Believers.
When did that come out?
I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay, so that was during the satanic panic period when this kind of stuff was actually being addressed and actually put, they were putting material out. You never really see that anymore.
No, it's kind of, they did the same thing with that they did with communism, right? They brought it out. They said this is a big deal, and then they made fun of McCarthy, disgraced him, then debunked it and said, "Oh yeah, that was just the kind of the rantings of a alcoholic madman," and they were really just letting the air out of the bag for a little bit, and then they were going to kill the messenger, right? And I think a lot of that started to happen. We talked about this before, where they started to debunk, the false memory syndrome stuff.
Yeah,
right. It's like,
just gaslight everything, right?
Gaslight everything, and it all started with the McMartins, and it wasn't just the McMartins. I mean, there was a case in a neighborhood that I used to live in Austin called Oak Hill. Like there was the Oak Hill killings and kids going missing. So they even made a movie out of it. Okay. So it wasn't just like one area of the United States. And I've read accounts of people growing up in towns where there was small towns, not huge towns, but there was a lot going on in some of these small towns, and people like gathering in the woods and stuff like that. Right. Like, so when I see this with this guy and the level of kind of social intercourse that he had with other people at much higher levels, and then I hear some of these other stories, I begin to think a movie like The True Believers is probably a lot more closer to the truth than we'd like to realize.
Yeah, and it's also generational, because I thought another coincidence is that his dad, who I'm not quite sure what the relationship was there. He's attached in some way to his dad. I don't know. I mean,
I was going to get into the intergenerational stuff. I think that's
his dad died when he was 13, but his dad worked for Raytheon as a satellite guru.
Right. Yeah. No, this stuff has to be intergenerational. It's nature and nurture, right? And for the most part, nature gives most of us kind of an equal footing, right? For the most part. Then the nurture part comes in. And if you're brought up in an environment that is psychopathic or satanic, and it's intergenerational, you don't stand a fucking chance, right? You just don't stand a chance, because you're going to be taken through those rituals when you're much younger, and it'll be a part of your life. And some of it you may not even recall. I mean, some of these people, I'm sure, and I've met people in my life throughout the course of my life They have absolutely no memory of their childhood, none whatsoever. And the reason for it is that they're blacking something out.
Well, and then if you don't toe the line, they're going to kill you, like Bissett, or possibly, we're going to get into this a little bit later in the show. Obama's chef. What's that all about?
That to me is the biggest story right now.
Where did he come from? What got him a job? He's black. Okay, so you get a racial brother in there. He's working in the White House. Then he goes and he works with Obama. Apparently, Michelle Obama is kind of difficult.
Let's save that for the second hour.
Okay.
Let's get into that.
But I found this other little clip of him talking about the tools. I want to see what you think about this. So the interview we were looking at, go to 12:20, and it's about a minute and a half. Let's take a look at this.
Okay.
I want to get your opinion on it. Now that you've got a little background on this guy, it's actually good that we skipped it.
And that was the same video.
Yeah.
All right. Let me cue that up. That's at 12:20.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man. Just by looking at his face, this guy is so fucked up. I mean, just the face alone. Let me show you this. Here we go.
Speaking of faces, I wish I could get a little better lighting on mine.
Well, you got a homework assignment there, Russ.
I'm healthy now, guys. So I know.
You got to get yourself a little ring light. Get your ring light and the green screen. Look at this face.
He's kind of pompous. He's kind of pompous. And listen to what he says.
He's got those squinty little Scorpio eyes.
Yeah, shark's eyes.
Yeah, and
can you just picture him being the doorman at one of these parties?
This dude is complex. I'm telling you right now. He is really complex. He's complex Rex. All right, here we go.
All right. One of the things I learned from my father was furniture building.
So he's steepling right now. He's putting his fingers together like this. We oftentimes see this when people want to portray themselves as experts. Now, he is an expert in some ways, but it's interesting that when he's starting to talk about furniture building, that this is when he's doing this.
Okay. He was an aerospace engineer and built satellites. And
runs in the family, building things.
And built furniture at home.
So
and I still build it in the same exact workshop.
So it's interesting that, and if you look at his left hand, he's almost making a fist right now. I do think that there's hostility associated with what he's about to say.
Pretty much used in almost every job. And it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
Okay. Cabinet maker hammer. Okay.
It is persuasive enough.
It's interesting to associate a word like persuasive with a hammer. So in essence, this question is what we call a projective test. It's when you project what goes on internally outward, whether you say it, draw it, do it in some different way. Point is that this is a projection of his own psychology.
It's perfect for a facilitator.
A hammer, what is that? That shows aggression, anger, force, power. He wants to be seen as powerful. So even when asking as an architect or as someone that deals with city regulations, what's going to make you better at that? What's going to push your business forward? He comes out with a hammer. So truly, he's the one characterizing himself as aggressive, as angry, which I think is interesting.
When I need to persuade something.
Not someone.
Something.
And it's also interesting that he said, when I need to persuade something, because truly he's talking about people, and people that are capable of killing, people that are sadistic, people that like to hurt. They do see people as objects. So when he says something, even if he is referring to people in some way, and you see the amusement afterwards, that may be very real amusement. He may really see people as objects.
Persuade something.
Not someone.
Something.
Because persuade is not a word we use to describe something we do with inanimate objects.
Always yields excellent results. Yeah. And at the end of the project, whatever piece of furniture or what I'm working on, it always helps it come out beautifully.
Okay, great.
He's satisfied with the way that the results come out when you have to persuade something with a hammer. I think that's interesting. Don't want to be trying to read too much into it, but these are his words. So I just find that all quite interesting.
So you would be kind of that kind of hammer for your business?
And he's also moving his hands around a lot more than he did throughout the previous parts of the interview, as far as like interlocking his fingers. Previously, when he talked, he would use his hands to emphasize. Right now, it's more fidgeting, which is interesting because he is letting somebody in on something that he has a little less control over. When you're talking about things that are projective, that's a little bit less control than we have when we're answering something concrete, like what your city's regulation was from. Watch his hands right here.
You would be kind of that kind of.
Also, look at his body posture.
He's very
He's
self-satisfied.
leaning backward as he talks about this.
Yeah.
He's putting his nose in the air.
Yeah.
And in a very real way, when people put their nose up to somebody else, it is a way of showing superiority. He does feel superior in this situation. It makes him feel superior and powerful to think about being the hammer.
For your business. That's what you're saying. If that doesn't exist, that's what you would be.
Sometimes I have to be the heavy framing hammer.
The heavy framing hammer.
Other times I'm the lightweight hammer just to nudge things along.
All right.
Once again, he seems to have some insecurity about projecting himself as the expert in these situations while also answering these questions. Watch his hands.
The lightweight hammer just to nudge things.
See, he's doing the steepling again. He so desperately wants to come across as an expert, which it sounds like he is an expert in his field, but he's desperate to be seen as an expert and to be seen as smart. And that's what we oftentimes see when people are doing steepling. But it's almost an insecure level of steepling because he's doing that. He's putting his fingers together. He's holding his hands. So answering this question, that what tool would he be? He's going to be a hammer no matter what. And I think that that's a very telling and very interesting aspect of his psychology.
Along.
All right. I guess it's a hammer. We got it. But in the meantime, it's
Selfie time.
selfie time. You're fast. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah! Can you smile?
That is.
This once again shows someone that's in a tight amount of control. It's not somebody who comes across that he's anxious and doesn't want to smile. It comes across as someone who wants to be in control and doesn't want to smile for somebody else. So what we're seeing is someone who is highly meticulous, intelligent, analytical, and also likely very controlling. What I hope you've been able to do.
Okay, so
just a run-of-the-mill serial killer, I'm not so sure. There's more to this guy than that. He's a heavy hitter in some kind of secret society bullshit, degenerate shit that they're doing, and he gets his jollies out of doing work for his crime bosses.
yeah, I think that I look at him and I'm trying try to feel into him, right? I'm trying to feel into this guy, and I'm going to use a word here that is quite loaded in some ways, but I'm going to use it anyway. There's a part of him that feels absolutely retarded, right? Like, and when I say retarded,
Infantile,
like social retardation.
yeah,
like
infantile, sort of infantilism.
This is not a guy who knows how to interact with other people. He just doesn't know how to interact with other people for whatever reason, right? And he might even be a little bit on the spectrum, it looks like he has that feel about him. Maybe not so much that he can't tie a shoe. You throw in the fact that his voice is also like, he's a big guy, right? He's a big guy, but he doesn't talk like a big guy. His voice is kind of up here, like he's talking from like this part of his body upward. So he's really disconnected from the rest of his body. And when that happens, I think people are by and large hiding something, right? So just by kind of reading him at that level, I said before that I think he's more of a psychopath than a sociopath, and I'll stand by that.
See what you just said, I think, is apropos, because if he's part of his job is a procurer to try to entrap these young women, then he may not be. His size may be intimidating, but his personality is a little goofy.
Right, it is goofy,
and he may kind of lure him in pretty easily. Here, we're going to take you out. Going to take you out to Long Island. We're going to have a little party out there. Going to have you meet some of my friends, and there's going to be some good money into it. Pretty simple transaction and not scare the shit out of this woman.
So there was
women.
There was a story on that page that I glanced over about his wife divorcing him. It was a story about one of the neighbors, and apparently the neighbor was a woman, and she was in a chaise lounge, and she was sunbathing, and she caught him looking over the fence, like he was being a peeping Tom. And she asked him to basically put his nose back in his own backyard. And he did that. So he didn't argue with her. He didn't say he was sorry. He just kind of put up his hand and kind of walked away. Right. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like a really threatening person, which is where I'm going with this, would have done something like much more menacing in some ways. Like he might have made a remark like, I'd love to see you without that bikini on, right? Or something along those lines, right? But he didn't do that. He just kind of meekly.
Well, he's been described. There's been a few incidents where he's described approaching women, like in a park. There's one woman recently that encountered him, said he was creepy. But that's kind of in hindsight, after you know what he supposedly is.
Right, but that interaction is kind of telling, right? He just stopped it right there, and she said that he never did it again, right? Like he was satisfying his curiosity, but a sociopath, probably would have said, "Hey, I like what I'm seeing, and I'd like to see a little bit more, if you know what I'm saying," right? But he didn't do that. He just kind of meekly went back into his own backyard. That actually says something in a weird way about the guy. Wow, this is fascinating. Okay, so the other thing that I've been able to glean is that apparently he's worked for Trump. Do you know this?
No. Yeah, he was right. He's Republican conservative party in Long Island is where some of these guys is Bissett. Jimmy Bissett was connected to that, as well as Burke. So yeah, that makes sense that he would be working in the Long Island political scene. Yep. Well, that hasn't really been developed enough.
Yeah, like Trump really needs that on top of everything else, right? Let's just pile on here. Long Island is a weird place, man. It is a very strange place. The only real claim to fame that I have in my family line is going way back to Long Island. My ancestors were one of the first families to settle in Long Island. And somewhere along the way, they owned the house that was the Amityville Horror. That house was in my mother's family name.
I guess there's the South. I guess there's this. I mean, I'm not familiar with that area. But there's a South Beach and a North Beach, and they're kind of different. And supposedly the rednecks live in the trailer court areas on, I guess, the North Beach. And the South Beach is more of the wealthy. But you could see if you see any kind of footage of that area, it's pretty isolated.
Oh,
there's not much out there.
It's very isolated, right? And you have, of course, the elites in the Hamptons, right? I mean, that's all part of it.
Yeah.
And who knows what goes on in the Hamptons.
It reminds me a little bit of the Oregon coast. I've spent a little time down there, kind of visiting because I had a cousin down there, and then my folks had a place down there for a while. So it reminds me a little bit of that area.
A little bit, but there's a lot more money in Long Island, especially in the Hamptons. And then, of course, you have Montauk. Do you know anything about Montauk and Montauk Point out there?
Well, that's government. Yeah.
Right. And it's like real deep, dark, black programs supposedly connected to the Philadelphia experiment, Aleister Crowley, right? Like heavy stuff, Tesla. I actually have somebody who is a friend and a client who claims to have been one of the Montauk boys. These were boys that they would snatch up, and they would do these programs on them, and And so, yeah, I mean, Long Island is just fucking weird, right?
Yeah, so there's got to be little clusters of secret societies all along in there.
Oh,
you got finance, you got banking, you have
technology, magic, black
defense.
magic, right? Sacrifice, right. Yeah. No,
older part of America. There's a little more history there. Amityville.
Absolutely.
There's another little clip. Let's just kind of look at this because it shows the similarity, eerie parallels of Atlantic City and Long Island. There's a little clip there at 6:10, about 2 minutes. Kind of interesting. Kind of shows
Is it the same? Oh, here it is, right here. Yeah, I see it.
It kind of shows where these other murders have taken place, and I think that's going to pop up later, called the Eastbound Strangler.
All right.
I'm thinking he's the Eastbound Strangler, or because Atlantic City, again, it's entertainment, right?
Right.
Casinos, parties.
Trump.
Why would Rex have a place in Las Vegas?
Atlantic City's another one of those dark places, man. Really dark.
So dark places. He's got apparently a brother that's very unusual, a very unusual character.
It was too unusual to have a car date back here either. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'd still feel a little bit safe. I can see lights, I can see passing cars. It's not too far from my comfort zone.
While it seemed possible this was the kill site, 10 years later, how can we know for sure? Yet interestingly enough, a pattern did emerge.
It's strange, it looks a little bit, even a lot like Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
Same reeds, same desolate area, same slightly by the highway, slightly by the water.
The ocean is just that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hearing those windmills, they really make an eerie sound.
This noise, this feeling of vastness is comforting for them. An almost heterogeneous sound.
Web sleuther Peter Brent believes serial murderers sometimes pick kill sites and dumping grounds, partly because of sound.
It's so strong that serial killers who got caught actually wrote about it. They tried to describe that. You have it in dozens, if not hundreds of cases, a similar setup.
Spooky.
It's like wind over the forest.
The Munster House in Long Island.
It's like waves rolling on a beach.
And here in Atlantic City was it the spiraling churn of the windmills.
It's a perpetual sound that is not the same all the time, but almost the same. It adds to this feeling of vastness.
While we may have found an unexpected pattern, there was something that still bothered us. Why would the killer murder these women here, then risk driving to the Golden Key? Until the Eastbound Strangler is caught, we won't have any answers. But how can we ever expect to find the killer unless we keep publicly talking about this case as we are now? But thankfully, there was someone willing to speak publicly, a former Egg Harbor police captain named John DeAngelis, who had insider knowledge of the case before retiring in 2006.
The bodies were found in November, and at the end of that calendar year, they put a deal on the table to guys that had enough time in the retirement system, like in The Godfather, like a deal they couldn't refuse. So as a result of that, a lot of these experienced guys that were assigned to like the fight, they knew all the players, all the people, they were leaving. And the prosecutor really made a tremendous technical error by not using the expertise and expert opinions of some of these guys that had been around in that world for decades.
Oh, by the way, Burke fired some key investigators.
Like anybody else.
So Burke also fired several key investigators in the case.
Right. Hold on a second.
So there's the pattern down in Atlantic City. All of a sudden, you're getting rid of the.
Let me get out of this clip. Where are we?
And of course, that's how the whole goddamn country's operated.
Yep. Yeah.
We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Cleaning houses, military, education.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me hold on a second. It's got to be over here somewhere. I don't know why this clip is still playing. With StreamYard, you got to kind of hunt around a little bit sometimes. Hold on. Give me a second.
That's probably a good place to leave because he basically said,
I'm trying to like
they
exit out of
trashed the whole police department when this case started up.
Yeah.
Where have we heard that one before? Long Island.
Okay. All right, give me a second, Russ. I got to figure out how to get out of this video. Let me try this.
Maybe just close your Twitter DM.
There we go.
Got it?
Did it. It was hidden under another tab. So that was a really interesting part about the sound. I want to read you a lyric or a set of lyrics from, do you know the band Steely Dan?
Yep.
So they wrote a song. It's actually one of my favorite songs called "Don't Take Me Alive," and it's about a guy who is kind of on a killing spree, right? And really interesting set of lyrics here. I'll just read it real quick. I'm a bookkeeper's son. I don't want to shoot no one. While I cross my old man back in Oregon. Don't take me alive. Got a case of dynamite. I could hold out here all night. Yes, I crossed my old man back in Oregon. Don't take me alive. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Can you hear the evil crowd, the lies and the laughter? I hear my inside, the mechanized hum of another world. Right? Like that line completely matches what that guy was talking about. Like with the rotors of the wind turbine or the kind of the white noise of the ocean, right?
No, it's spooky. It's spooky. It's an evil place. It's evil.
I hear my inside, the mechanized hum of another world where no sun is shining, no red light flashing. Here in this darkness, I know what I've done.
See, I really
know
see on
all
a personal
at once who I am.
On a personal level, I really recoil from dark, scary places like that. They just spook the shit out of me. I'm a big scaredy cat when it comes to. I would never go down there, even with other people.
Right? Yeah.
Even with people I knew and trusted. There's no way. It's just too uncomfortable for me to go to a place like that, and to be lurking around on Long Beach, burying women. Can you imagine what that would take?
Oh wow! Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's
in burlap bags.
Yeah. No thanks. Somebody mentioned or wanted me to ask you about Taylor Schnabnis. You know this case at all?
The woman that's I haven't looked deeply into it. No, I don't. I can't really make a comment of it. She's mentally ill. Clearly.
Right. Yeah.
Dismemberment.
Yeah.
Now these list cases, they're not dismemberments involved in this. They're just kind of clean. They're just cleanup jobs.
Right.
They don't have the butchery and the kind of overkill sadistic quality to the body disposal, which kind of leads me to believe he's something a little different.
Yeah. No, just this is my first kind of glimpse into this guy and this case. And from what you've presented and my spidey senses, this thing goes like this, right? It's vertical. Like there are people above him that are engaged in this thing and he's part of it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens to him.
When does he get Epsteined in jail?
Well,
I don't think he's going to talk because he's not the classic serial killer.
No,
his ego doesn't center around letting the world know what his body count is.
No.
That's my theory. That's my theory.
No, that dude is complex, man. He's complex. He's fucking weird. That's a weird dude. And to even have a position as a really well-known New York architect, right? It's not your average guy. He's not a locksmith, working, in Amityville, Long Island. No, this is somebody who's very well connected. Wow, interesting. All right, you want to shift into Obama land a little bit here?
Yeah, you can carry that because I don't have a lot of opinions on it, but yes, I can add to what you've come up with.
So everybody knows at this point that their chef Tafari, I always blank out on his last name. Is it Reynolds? Tafari Campbell. Tafari Campbell was their chef. I don't know. I think he was their chef at the White House.
Right.
And, his claim to fame is that he brewed beer from the bees on the White House lawn, and they took the honey from the beer, from the bees, and he made kind of a honey ale or something like that, right? So he's been with them for a while, going all the way back to their days in the White House. And so this guy has seen a lot. He's seen a lot. He knows a lot. He knows the Obamas probably better than, I'd say, 98% of the public, right? He works for them and has worked for them for a while. And I guess he was their chef at their place in Martha's Vineyard. And so the story has it that Michelle Obama is just absolutely brutal to work for, right? I mean, that doesn't come as a surprise, I think. I think she would be an absolute nightmare to work for. But aside from that, like, what else did he know? What else did he see? And the inside baseball stuff that, I've been able to pick up, and other people around the internet have been able to pick up, is that the Obamas were there. They were there. They were
first they denied it, and then they confirmed it,
and then they confirmed it. Right now, I've also heard that the daughters were the ones that were on the pond, which is really like a big lake or small lake. That the daughters were on the paddleboard, like they were the other people that were on the pond at the same time. And supposedly there was somebody on the paddleboard with Tafari, right? So he wasn't alone. So this is all starting to come out now. Again, this is all kind of inside baseball, borderline speculation, but inside baseball stuff. That apparently, whatever happened, they were frantic, and they started.
Well, there's footage. There's footage out there showing him swimming, and he's a decent enough swimmer.
Yeah, I played that. He was in the pool training, right? He was doing steamboat. He was doing freestyle with fins, so he could swim. It was 8 feet of water. It's not terribly deep. So it wasn't like he was, swimming impaired. But apparently there were a flurry of phone calls that took place as soon as this happened. Obama was apparently frantic, like frantic. And they denied the Massachusetts State Police the autopsy. Did you hear about this?
Wow. That's pretty serious.
They said that we want to do the autopsy in D.C. So they're completely redirecting the autopsy.
That's just, that they should not have that kind of authority. As an ex-president, he should have no authority. It kind of reminds me of the JFK Jr. plane crash,
right?
Where the military all of a sudden takes away the jurisdiction of the local people,
right?
Because they were doing a narrative and a cover up of what really happened. So that something like that makes me very suspicious. Of all the things you said, that's really a big red flag for
That
me.
is a huge red flag. They were not going to let them do the autopsy there. And I don't even know where that is right now. But it also reminds me a little bit of Scalia and how they just shipped Scalia right out of Texas. And I think they got him to, was it somewhere in Arizona? And they cremated Scalia, and Scalia's a Catholic. And
and it's cremated him before his family even gave permission.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. From what I can figure out about Scalia is that they were involved in kind of a rough trade situation at that ranch. And from what I understand, whoever was with him slit his throat from ear to ear. Right. That's what happened to him. So they had to cremate him because if they had done an autopsy, they would have seen what had happened. And so they just like wasted no time and burned his body.
Wasn't Scalia supposed to be homosexual?
Yeah, well, I think he was. And so that was a rough trade situation that they had at the ranch.
Yeah, they got him out there in some really remote spot, had a little action for him, I guess, kind of a little relaxation, chance to get away from DC.
Well, I don't think it was the first time. I think that's what these people are involved in. And this brings it right back. I mean, if we're talking about Scalia, we're talking about this kind of action, right? You know, how far away is it from, how many degrees of separation are we talking about from Architect Rex, right? I mean, probably not too many. But they were definitely into rough trade stuff. And Scalia was also a member of this weird kind of Catholic secret society. It wasn't Opus Dei, but it was kind of like Opus Dei. And this was a hunting ranch, right? This was kind of like Dick Cheney territory. So this is what this case reminds me of, is how quickly they want to just, get rid of this body, get rid of this case, let their people in DC sort of take over the autopsy. There still is no autopsy report on this.
Yeah, I mean, Scalia was older. I heard he had maybe heart issues, so that's an easy one. That's an easy hit.
Yeah.
In fact, it didn't take much to kill somebody like that.
No, but from what I understand, he got his throat cut.
Is that what happened?
Yes.
They didn't just smother him, suffocate him.
I heard he got his throat cut. The thing with what's going on Martha's Vineyard that puts a whole other weird twist on it is now Oprah wants to buy their place. Did you see this?
Jeez.
Like Michelle Obama has come in.
Next thing they know, they're going to bring in Michael Baden to do the autopsy.
Right, the guy who like did Kennedy's autopsy and
the guy that's just a total
Sandy
made
Hook,
man,
the Sandy Hook guy,
made man for the crime syndicate. Watch for that to happen.
Excuse me. So so they called Oprah in, right? So Oprah was
weird.
One of those frantic calls, and now Oprah wants to buy the house.
Why would they even want to sell the house? Why? How long have they lived there? How long they haven't lived there that long?
I think maybe about a year or two after he left the White House. I think they got that property.
So is it some kind of an extortion on Obama? Obama's maybe getting a little bit out of line, or what's going on here? Why the heavy-handed stuff?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question, right? Like, so
you see, what theoretically what you could do is set this little drowning up to make Obama look bad. He didn't have anything to do with it, as some kind of an extortion. Next thing you know, he's selling his house.
Well, or maybe he did have something to do with it, right? Like, I think if the story is true and that the other paddle boarders who were on that pond were the quote unquote daughters And that the other part of the story is that there was a person on the back of the paddleboard that he was on. And again, the rumor, I want to just make that clear, is that the rumor is that that person was Obama on the back of the paddleboard. And again, these are all.
Well, there's not a rumor. They haven't identified who is on the back of the paddleboard. So that's another red flag,
Right,
obviously.
exactly. I'm just
no
throwing,
autopsy and just, what's the deal?
It's
Why
to
don't
see
you just tell us
see
what happened.
Exactly. It could be like, they haven't even issued a statement. Like there's not even been a statement. The only statement is that the Obamas wish to have their privacy respected at this time. That's it. That's it. And this guy has a wife and 2 kids. That's the other side of this. Like he's got these twins that,
Well, there seems to be kind of, like the Clintons. They had definitely, they're people that work for them. There's definitely shelf time on those people.
Well,
There's really only so long you can work for that.
Yeah, her chef died too.
Right.
I think.
Was it Clinton or yeah, Clinton?
And I think,
and then there wasn't another one.
I think it was drowning. Actually. I think Clinton's chef drowned.
Yeah, in a lake or something. Yeah.
Right. Really like high
Rockies.
strange. And then there's the infamous photo of Obama hanging out with Anthony Bourdain in Vietnam on his show, right? And what happens to Bourdain? Bourdain is 6 feet.
Bourdain was hit. I was convinced of that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I did a big investigation story on that. If anybody wants to go read what happened to Bourdain, who is a guy that I actually kind of like. I kind of identified with him, traveling around the world, eating food, and hanging out with the plebes. I always kind of liked that guy, his persona.
Yeah, I liked. Yes, so I watched every single episode that he did. Was it No Destination or whatever it's called? But yeah, and I watched it with my kid. I loved watching Bourdain. But he started to get involved with some really weird people too.
Yeah, weird girlfriend.
Like the Asia Argento thing was just bizarre, totally bizarre. And the other thing, like Bourdain had kind of a weird side. Like he was there was a really dark side to Tony Bourdain, and he was into, what do they call it? When they do these tools, or trepanine, or like these medieval tools where they like go into your skull and they like take out parts of your skull and do shit like that. Like he was really into that stuff. Like he had like a weird fetish for those kinds of tools. So there is a very dark side to Tony Bourdain. You know what my theory of Tony Bourdain is?
What?
Do you know Leonard Cohen, the singer?
Yeah.
I believe Leonard Cohen's actually his father.
I've heard that theory. Yeah, I've heard that theory. Apparently, there's some neighborhood connection there where he came from, his roots. Isn't he kind of described as being half Jewish or something?
Who, Tony Bourdain?
Yeah.
But
he also had a side to him where he's very sympathetic to the Palestinians. He did a show in Palestine that would just bring tears to your eyes. He had a good side to him.
I agree with that. One of my favorite episodes is when he went to Dubai, and he had lunch or dinner with this guy in Dubai who was an English investment dude. Like, and Bourdain is trying to like get him to admit that Dubai is, built on the back of slave labor. And the English dude looks at him like he's from another fucking planet. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is where people.
Well, he pissed off a lot of people in the right, I should say, or maybe the white.
Well, he said he would gladly poison Trump, right? If he was the chef.
More than that, he's into race mixing. He said that's the only solution. He's got this conversation with this guy in Brazil where he says, ultimately we're just gonna have to mix all the races, and that pissed a lot of people off. So the guy's no angel. He's not a perfect guy, there's things about him that are not so hot. He did his taste in women. I mean, come on, man, really?
Yeah, exactly.
But you see how buff he was. I mean, he was just built like a brick shitstorm.
Yeah, well, he started to get into. It's really interesting because he meets this woman, I think, in Sardinia when he went to Sardinia, and he meets her there, and they become friends and they become lovers, and eventually he marries her, right? And I watched every single episode of a show, and there were a couple episodes where she was in the show and she was kind of cuckolding him. I'm like, whoa, are you really? You have that kind of relationship with her? And then she winds up getting into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and she leaves Bourdain and she goes to Brazil. They had a kid together, and she starts studying Brazilian jiu-jitsu. What I didn't know is that Bourdain started to study Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. So that's the other side of this weird Bourdain story, is that, apparently he could take care of himself a little bit. So, he
looked like he could. He's very buff for an older guy. Very impressive.
When the moment came, somebody, I don't believe that he hanged himself, even though I'm sure he was very distraught over this thing with Asia Argento, right? Who just completely, just dumped.
Well, the other big element of this whole setup is his feud with Harvey Weinstein. Now,
Right.
at the time they did the hit on Bourdain, Harvey Weinstein was still a big heavy hitter. He hadn't been taken down yet.
Well, that's because Asia Argento came out, right? And
yeah,
what we learned about Asia Argento is that really, pardon my expression, she's a whore. She was a publicity whore, daughter of Dario Argento, the Italian filmmaker. Talk about dark.
So Bourdain decided to jump in the middle of this feud between Weinstein
and Argento, and
right.
And even her story doesn't really hold up around Weinstein. Like, it's just like, this is misplaced chivalry. Sorry, Tony. I know you're coming to the aid of your damsel in distress there, but
yeah. Maybe it was all a big act, but it may have cost him his life, because I don't think Harvey Weinstein at that point, he was the heavy hitter and could threaten and pull the plug on somebody. I think that's part of it, or there might have been a committee. So he insulted didn't he insult the Clintons, right?
Right. He yes, absolutely. He insulted
them off.
He was an equal opportunity insulter. He insulted.
He's just a whole list of people you really shouldn't insult, at least at that point.
Yeah.
And plus, you're leading up to the election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he seemed to have information on people. Inside scoop.
So bringing this back to the Obama thing, because I think this is really important, right? If we can extrapolate that, really what we've been in since 2020, 2021, really is the third term of Obama, right? So you have Obama, you've got Michelle, you've got Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, you have the whole intelligence apparatus like Clapper and Brennan. All those people are working with them. They don't just go away, right? Like they're for hire. And so you have this major operation that kind of we've been put through. Whatever happened in 2020, which I believe was a coup, and this is not the United States of America anymore. Whatever it is we're operating under is it's not the same. So then who's running the show? Right? It's not Biden. We all know it's not Biden. Is it people like Alexander Mayorkas or Merrick Garland? I think they're foot soldiers. I think there's a power behind the power. And I think we all know who that power is. That power is now compromised. Seriously compromised. And I talked about this on my show the whole week. There is absolutely no way Obama can be in public now. He can't come out. He can't sell a candidate. He can't sell a position. Like, he is so ready.
Well, there's been some scuttlebutt about Michelle Obama taking over for the 24 run. That's out now.
It's done.
Yeah.
Right. So
this little incident, it's almost like Teddy Kennedy at Chappaquiddick.
I talked about it. It's a Chappaquiddick moment. And
so somebody took Michelle Obama, and by extension Obama or Michael Obama or whatever it is,
and even
out of the picture
Biden.
with this little coup.
Absolutely.
So who did it? Who did it? You have a theory?
Well, okay. So there's the inside theory, which is that perhaps Tafari Campbell saw something he shouldn't have seen.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so they could just say, "Sorry, Barry, it's for your own protection. This guy's we got to get rid of him."
Or maybe it came from. Look, there was a guy by the name of Donald Wright who supposedly Obama had a very close relationship with through Jeremiah Wright's church.
Right.
It was it was Donald. It wasn't Wright. It was Donald. What was his last name? Shit. But he was in Donald Young. He was in the choir at Jeremiah Wright's church. And supposedly he and Obama had a very close relationship. And I actually...
they were lovers.
Right. And so there was... I don't know if you remember this, Russ, but there was this woman who came out with this story, and she was part of this kind of Democratic kind of fundraiser event thing in Chicago. And it was at one of these hotels. And she went downstairs to look for the restroom, and she smelled this really weird smell. And the weird smell is crack, like burning crack. And then she saw these two figures, kind of shadowy figures together. And again, this is somebody third party, anonymous. And she believes that she saw Barack Obama and Donald Young, and that they were very agitated. And she did not want to be seen, right? So we know that there was at least one person connected here to Obama that part of a body count, right? Like there is a bit of a body count here. The other one, and I'm probably headed into sacrilege here when I bring this up, but again, when he went to, this was right after he got elected, and he went to Hawaii to see his ailing grandmother. And then she apparently died and he came back. That was a big red flag for me. Like, that's a red flag. I just got the weirdest vibes off of that. And I'm like, what really happened there? What went on? So there is like a strange body count around Obama.
Yeah, the guy's a mess. I mean, there's got to be a lot of cleanup necessary around a guy like that.
So the operation is compromised now.
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of this is going to be really interesting to watch. Right now, you've got here. Now, I don't know if these two things are connected or not, but within 72 hours, the judge who's presiding over the Hunter Biden case
So Robert's frozen.
Well, that was interesting.
What happened?
I just got cut off on the internet. What was the last word? What was the last word you heard me talk about?
Oh, you were kind of going into the whys and hows of why Obama's being dealt with in this matter.
Yeah. So what I was trying to get to, ultimately, and unfortunately, I got pushed off the stream here, is that this event has altered the timeline. It's altered our timeline because you're talking about the central nervous system of two major deep state players and the apparatus around them.
Yep.
Right. And now you're dealing, and I talked about Hunter Biden.
Well, the thing is, everybody knows Biden has to go. So I want to establish that. So whatever.
72 hours after this thing happened with Obama, the judge in the Hunter Biden case rejected the plea deal. They rejected the plea deal on their side because like 72 hours after this happened. And it's like now he's got to go to trial. Right. And he's going to have to go through this instead of it being a universal plea deal for everything moving forward. Look, the timeline has changed. And what I was getting at is that this guy has left behind a wife and 2 kids, which I don't want to trivialize at all. Right. He had a family. So on the other side of this, right, I'm looking at this idea of sacrifice. And I'm not saying
what about the idea of a white hat operation?
Well,
just take all these guys out. Get rid of Biden and then make sure Obama doesn't really come back.
Well,
to stop all that, and then I would characterize that as a white hat operation or coup. Maybe even the Russians. Who knows? Maybe even the Russians.
I think it was somebody. This is just my personal opinion. I think it was somebody much closer to Obama. That's what I think.
Yeah, but he took himself and Michelle out of the race.
Absolutely.
Well, and he's going to sell his house and what's he going to do?
We think that these people are just completely buttoned up and in control all the time.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's always the case, right?
Yeah,
like they have really dark secrets and a dark past, and they're like volcanoes that they're trying to sit on.
Yeah, so it's a night sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I feel like everything moving forward now is going to have a very, very different feel to it. So then, the question then becomes, who rises to power in the void? Because Obama, I think we can all agree that Biden's a fucking puppet, right? So who's pulling the strings? I think we can all pretty much agree on who's pulling the strings, at least at a certain level. So now there's going to be a void in power. And who is going to kind of, go after that void and try to, assume that position?
Yeah, who's going to emerge? I mean, exactly. I don't even know.
I at this point, I think Biden is on his way out even faster than he was before. Even faster. Right now, you got McCarthy rattling around the whole impeachment thing, even though he's just gone to the Bohemian Grove, which he's admitted. That's another story. But I think this is, to me, this story with the cook is the story of the 21st century right now. Like right now.
Yeah.
This is big.
Yeah.
This is really big. It's changed everything.
Well, I'm glad I came on the program to find this out. Because I wasn't really thinking about it, but I think you kind of nailed it. Yeah. There's some intricacies here.
Deep
It might be white hats. That's what I always hope for. Let's just get rid of all these neocon warmongers and try to kind of restore some peace.
Well, sometimes
Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, would it favor him?
Maybe. Maybe. Do you know, I found something interesting out about Kennedy. He does not have a Secret Service detachment. Did you know that?
Oh my God.
He has applied for a secret, like everybody who's running for president has a Secret Service detachment.
Hopefully he has some kind of a security service around
he's
him.
He's got his own squad.
Yeah.
And if I were him, I would keep it that way, honestly.
Yeah.
He probably should have learned from the past a little bit. So
I think he should go and review the Huey Long assassination real close.
Yeah. Are you a JFK researcher? I've never asked you that.
Yeah, I've looked into the assassination as much as I can, and I have theories. I have theories about it, and they're fairly conventional assassination theories.
Do you know Gary Fannin? Have you ever read his work or seen his videos?
No. Or I may have, but the name doesn't ring a bell.
I just saw one of his videos a couple days ago, and I'm going to try and get him on the show. This guy is the most granular, molecular JFK researcher I've ever run across. Right? Like he is so granular and molecular that he was able to isolate the covers of Time magazine from 1963. And they were all about like Billy Saul Estes, who was a crony of LBJ. And it was the Kennedys who were trying to expose how corrupt LBJ was. And they were using Life magazine to begin to mount a case against. He's got so much of this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to send you the link to the video.
Well, they definitely didn't want him on the ticket 64. I think that's been established.
They wanted him out. They could not stand each other. Right. Have you ever heard the recordings of him and Jackie? Have you ever heard those recordings?
Of LBJ and Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of respectful. He kind of coos with her a lot. I mean, he gets her on the phone and calls her dear, and there's a whole series of tapes that I highly recommend everybody get a hold of. The LBJ tapes.
Yes.
Where you can kind of see how this guy operates.
Yeah.
And he's pretty smooth. LBJ gets on the phone. He could really work the phone, and he could work the cloakroom pretty well too.
Yeah.
So you can understand where he got his juice from.
Yeah.
There was some juice to that guy. He wasn't a nobody at all.
Do you know about his Johnson, Lyndon's Johnson?
It's supposed to be pretty spectacular, right?
Right. So what he would do is, like, if he was to meet with the head of state from some other country, he'd be out in the White House pool naked, right? And they would basically bring the guy back, right? And he would come out of the pool, naked, and his schlong would be,
I've never heard that story.
Yeah, that's what he would do. Because he wanted to have like a psychological advantage over a guy who had a small.
Yeah, he was very intimidating.
Yeah,
very intimidating.
I live just down the road from his ranch, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, well, Russ, it's always great to have you on, and always look forward to our next session. People, if you have not found winterwatch.net, just go bookmark it. Russ is always updating the site. He's got new material. He's got a plethora of evergreen material and research. You just spend hours going through his archives there. So please check it out. I'll leave the link in the notes to the show. And anything else you got going on, Russ, besides promoting your health and your swingers tour of 2023 here?
I think that we got through this show pretty well. We kind of were a little bit on the fly, but we did it. I think we got. You're freezing again. No, you're there.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I was just being still.
We got through this show. I was kind of worried about this show that we could pull it off, but I think
no. Look, dude. As long as we have the pardon the expression, as long as we have the bones for a show, right? We can make soup out of it. And
I think
there
so.
Unfortunately, there were plenty of bones for this show.
Yeah.
Pun slightly intended. Well, listen, you have a great evening there over in the Wonderland of Prague. Are you digging your new neighborhood? You like it over there?
Like it a lot, and hitting the pool a lot. It's the knee's still stiff. I mean, this knee injury is hard to overcome because it just whenever I use it, I just get tight and very, very stiff.
Right.
But I'm getting stronger. I've got my glutes. I can't believe my glutes now, just from 2 months in the pool.
Really?
Jesus. Oh. You know, I think I have pretty good muscle memory and muscle mass. You know, when I was younger, I was pretty muscular. Maybe I could bring that back, but at least the butt's coming back big time.
Look at that. Yeah. Well, don't forget that perineal sunbathing we talked about last time. That'll accelerate your process.
You think that'll help? Well, the prostate's okay. We don't have to go there.
Right. All right. Thanks a lot, Russ, for being here.
All right.
Really appreciate it. Russ Winter, winterwatch.net.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We're just going to, there we go. All right. So we're back here. I apologize. I went on a kind of I don't know. I'd like to think it was an impactful monologue, but you'll never hear it. You hear the summation of it. Again, thanks for Russ. Go to winterwatch.net. And as far as keeping your health together, please check out our sponsor and friend of the show, truehempscience.com. And if you buy $100 or more of the product and type in 15MINS, guess what? You'll get free product along with your order. Always a 30-day guarantee. And if you spend $150 or more, you get free shipping. So help out our good friend Chris at True Hemp Science. Help your body out. It's a win-win. 360 win. Mods, thank you for being here. Chataria, thanks for being here. Appreciate y'all. We'll be back on Sunday night with Sunday Night Astro Live. And, maybe we'll get into some Martha's Vineyard forensics. Maybe we could do that live on Sunday night and see what we come up with. All right. Take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart too said what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Bye for now.